Hey guys, how is everybody doing? And welcome back to my 2024 end of the year rankings. The last video I made, I did my top 10 most disappointing films of 2024. Now today, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 most surprising movies of 2024. So when I say surprising, now these are movies that I did not look forward to, movies that I wasn't excited for, or maybe some of these movies are just kind of movies I just went in kinda just to watch the film, and I came out and I ended up really enjoying the movie, and it ended up possibly being one of my favorites of the year, which there are about 1 or 2 of those on here. So, yeah. Oh god, excuse me. I always look forward to doing a video like this because I always love talking about movies that I was not expecting to like or love necessarily, because I love that when that happens with me, when I go into a movie not expecting to like it, or a movie I just don't know anything about and I just walk away loving the movie or really enjoying it or having my expectations over exceeded. So yeah, I always love doing that with films. That's one of the best things about doing a movie review channel, is kind of just going to movies and kind of just hoping that you get surprised. So yeah, I'm glad I saw more than 10, because I honestly could have did like a top 15. So many movies surprised me this year, but I boiled it down to 10. And so here are my top 10 most surprising movies of 2024. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Lisa Frankenstein. Now, I talked about this movie when I did my top 10 horror movies of the year. Now, this was a movie I was not really looking forward to. I knew absolutely nothing about the movie. I only knew one thing, I believe, and the one thing I knew is that this movie was actually directed by Robin Williams' daughter, and that was really all I really knew. And I knew that Catherine Newton was the main star in it. I knew that, but other than that, I didn't know anything about the movie, and it was about a week before Valentine's Day. January only had two movies at the time. Last January only had two movies for me to check out, so not a lot of movies to watch. So I was kind of a bit excited for the month of February because there's a lot more movies coming out I was interested in. But then I saw, when I went on to my local movie theater app, I saw that a movie called Lisa Frankenstein was going to be playing here, and I was like, you know what? January is a bit of a bland month. Let's go see this movie. Maybe it'll be fun. I don't know what it is, but Robin Williams' daughter directing movie, that sounds interesting. And I walked away really enjoying the movie. It's nothing what I expected it to be. So what you get from this movie is that the girl played by Catherine Newton is kind of a goth chick, kind of socially awkward. She kind of keeps to herself because unfortunately her mother was murdered by a masked maniac, and I believe this movie takes place during the 80s. And she has always kind of kept to herself. She's kind of weird. She's that one weird girl you see walk around the hallways in high school. She's that kind of girl. And and she kind of falls in love necessarily with this head grave of this guy, and she kind of gives him a bracelet. She kind of reads to him. She reads poetries to him and all that. And it's kind of like a weird relationship thing. But then one night a storm happens and lightning resurrects his body, and throughout the movie they kind of had this building relationship, and Catherine Newton's character talks to this zombie weird creature thing about this guy that she likes and about that. And it's just a really interesting movie, and it's really kind of fun to watch, and it has a lot of Tim Burton like aspects to you. Like, if I didn't tell you that this wasn't directed by Tim Burton, you would probably be surprised, because you would probably mistake it as a Tim Burton film, because it has those feels, it has those looks, it has that atmosphere, it has that kind of dark comedy-ish in the movie. So yeah, I really enjoyed Lisa Frankenstein, and for someone who is a Tim Burton fan, I got a bit of a kick out of it. So yeah, I really enjoyed Lisa Frankenstein. It's kind of a bummer it didn't do well at the box office, but at the same time, I get it. It wasn't overly advertised. They didn't really advertise the movie like at all. I was a bit surprised when I even saw. There was other people in my theater when I went to go watch this. So yeah, it's fun. If you're a Tim Burton fan, I would definitely recommend it. But if the premise alone sounds great to you, I would definitely recommend Lisa Frankenstein. It was one of the more pleasant surprises of 2024. A little dancing, I'm shaking my butt, I'm trying to drink a little water. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Now, I had not seen the other Beverly Hills Cop movies until this movie came out. I actually watched them like the week that this one was coming out. I did a review series. I'll probably have a card up here for you to go check out. And I really enjoy those three movies. Even the third one. The third one isn't great, but I still get a little bit of enjoyment out of it. It is definitely a fun movie. But yeah, I really enjoyed those three movies. But when this movie was announced, I didn't really care to check it out at first, until that first trailer came out. I'm like, okay, it doesn't look terrible, but just everything about this movie had a red flag because apparently this movie had been in development hell for like 20 years or something like that. Eddie Murphy said it was gonna happen, and then it wasn't gonna happen. They basically just pretty much just scrap the project in general, but then they kind of went back to it and they kind of got something moving, but it didn't really go anywhere. And then it was announced to go to Netflix, who has not had a great run so far with direct to streaming movies, and it just so many red flags coming out. And some of those red flags is because Eddie Murphy had not been making great movies at the time. The last time he did a legacy sequel to one of his films with Coming to America, he made a sequel to that for Prime Video, and that came out. That ended up being one of his worst movies and one of the worst movies of 2021. So I was kind of expecting that with Axel F, but this time it's going to be on Netflix and possibly just make an unnecessary sequel that a lot of us wanted, but it was just a little too late. And I was pleasantly surprised how much fun and how much I enjoyed Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. It is not the best of the series by all means, and a lot of people have been saying it's better than the second one, which I don't get, but I understand, but I kind of understand a little bit. But yeah, I really enjoyed Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. It was a pleasant surprise for me, and it was just a fun time. I really enjoyed what they did with this because it's not at all what I was expecting. And Eddie Murphy, he brought back those Eddie Murphy feels again, to where like you're watching this and you felt like since at the same time, and one of the reasons I was kind of nervous for this movie is that he has not played Axel in years. So I was kind of nervous as like, oh, is he going to be able to slip back in that role? Is he going to be the same old Axel? He's the same old Axel. He's doing his thing. And it was great to see the other two characters, the other two cops from the other three movies come back in this movie. But it was kind of a shame they didn't really do much with him, do much with those two. They're kind of off screen for the most of this. And the other problem that I had with the movie was Axel's daughter, which honestly they didn't really need to include that. They could have scrapped that. And the villain stuff, I felt was painfully obvious from the beginning, and they try to keep it a secret, and they try to make it a twist at the end, which I felt was obvious the second the character came on screen. But yeah, Beverly Hills Cop Axel F was a pleasant surprise for me, and Eddie Murphy says that there is a fifth movie being written, and they do have a fifth movie planned, and they have talked to him about it. And if that fifth movie does come to fruition, and we do get to see Axel Foley one more time, I would be down for it. Coming in at number 8 is going to be John Krasinski's If. Now, this was a movie I pretty much was completely negative about. I had no expectations for it. I really had no interest in the movie at first, excuse me. But decided to kind of give it a shot just because John Krasinski's name was on it. But, like, I just didn't really care to check out the movie. Trailers did absolutely nothing for me. All the trailers just looked like a very below average kids movie with a bunch of jokes that weren't going to work for me. Kind of like your average kids jokes, kind of like from the Despicable Me movies, kind of like that kind of humor I was expecting. But I didn't know. There's something about the advertisement, something about what they were trying to sell me on, I just didn't get. With like Steve Carell voicing like the big purple guy. When I saw some of the footage of him, I'm like, that guy's going to be so freaking annoying to me. But I decided to give it a chance. I went with my little sister to go check out the movie, and I will be damned if not this movie almost left me teary-eyed at the end of the movie, because this movie is far away just from a kids movie. It is a movie about growth and about going into adulthood, because that is exactly what I got from the movie, and I did not expect that whatsoever. This was a movie that I was expecting a dumb kids movie, but I got so much more out of that, and it's not what I was expecting, because what you get from this movie, not only do you get enough there for the kids, but you get a lot of cool kind of social commentary about adulthood and from growing up, about not being a kid anymore and having to move on from your imaginary friends that you used to have. Like you have that adulthood is gonna sneak up on you, and I'm slowly going into adulthood. I'm a fucking freshman, for God's sakes. Like every year I feel like I get older, and I feel like I'm losing all of my childish things, and this movie has that great message about it. Like, and the humor, the one thing I was thinking I was gonna hate, really worked for me, and at the end, it almost left me teary-eyed. This was a huge surprise for me. I did not expect to enjoy this movie as much as I did, and it's not a surprise to me that this movie didn't do well at the box office, but I'm a bit bummed by that. But yeah, If was a huge surprise for me. It was a huge surprise for me. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did, and not only is it a great kids movie, but it's a damn good movie about adulthood, and I really enjoyed the movie just for that alone. Coming in at number 7 is, might as well just let him say it.
Keep the change. Roadhouse.
Yeah, the remake of Roadhouse. Now, this was a movie when it was coming out. Didn't really have a lot of faith in it. Trailers, they looked fun. It looked like one of those dumb, fun action movies, but I didn't really expect it. But I had watched the original before this, and I don't really care for that original movie. That is not for me. That is just a movie I just don't really enjoy all that much. It's just not for me. So I didn't really have a lot of faith for this remake, and like I've said before on this channel, I'm just not a big remake fan, but I was thinking that maybe they could fix some issues that I had with the original, but all this movie is just fun, dumb action sequences. That's like all this movie is. Sure, there are moments here to where it gets a little over carried away because it kind of feels like Fast and Furious in a way, kind of like where that series went to go on after the fucking sixth movie. No, excuse me, but yeah, this was a movie I didn't really have a lot of faith in. The original didn't really work for me. I didn't really think a remake would work for me. But the movie's just fun. The action's fun. John Krasinski, he's a lot of fun to watch in this movie. Did I say John Krasinski? Excuse me. Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal is a lot of fun to watch in the lead role here. He's a lot of fun. And I'm still mixed about the whole UFC part about this movie, which again, when you have Conor McGregor as your villain, you're gonna have a lot of UFC references in this movie, which again I understand, but it just didn't work for me. But yeah, this movie really surprised me. I didn't really expect it to. I didn't really expect to really enjoy it all that much. But Conor McGregor, he was a lot of fun to watch in this movie. I knew he was gonna be fun. And we are getting a sequel to this movie, surprisingly, which I didn't expect, but at the same time, this had some of the biggest numbers ever for a fucking Prime Video movie, so that was about to come. So yeah, Roadhouse, it was a pleasant surprise, and we shall see what a Roadhouse 2 will look like. Oh, whoops. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Twisters. Now, again, this is one of those movies I was very negative on. This was a movie that I saw the trailers, I saw the advertisement, I was like, oh god, that movie does not look good whatsoever. That movie does not look like it's for me. That movie just doesn't look, it just doesn't catch my attention. I love Glenn Powell, but I just don't have a lot of interest in this movie. But I decided, what the hell? It was playing at my local drive-in that opens during the summer here. I went out and I went and watched it with my stepfather. I had never seen the original before watching this one, but I had watched it before we went to go watch this one, and I really enjoyed the first Twister. That is a movie I really enjoy, but again, it's not one of my all-time favorites or anything. So I went to the drive-in, and wow, I was surprised of how much fun I had with this movie and just how much I actually enjoyed this movie, and to where I don't know if it's a huge hot take or not, but I actually prefer Twisters over the first one. I think it is more, just more for me. Like, it's just a lot of fun. Glenn Powell, once again, he's kind of like the main reason I went to go check out this movie because he's a guy who's kind of grown to be like an absolute star, really. But after starring in Top Gun Maverick, he's kind of exceeded his career, and you'll see me talk about him again on this list later. So yeah, it was just a lot of fun. I didn't expect that. I ended up preferring it over Twister, and I don't think we should get a third one. I've seen a lot of people say it's like, oh, this movie deserves a third one. It would be a lot of fun. It's just like I don't get it, but it does have its issues because the main issue that I had with the movie was the whole romantic part of this movie, to where it tries to recapture that one from the first one, which it did not work out here. The two actors did not have a lot of have a lot of chemistry with each other. I felt there just wasn't really anything there, and they kind of tease at the end, but it doesn't really go anywhere once again. But yeah, other than that, I really enjoyed Twisters. It was a fun time. The CGI of the actual tornadoes were absolutely amazing, and I was really glad to see this movie overperform at the box office when it came out because like a lot of people were predicting this movie to not do very good. But I'm glad it over succeeded, and I think that was going to be the main reason we'll get a third one. But yeah, Twisters, it was an absolute surprise of a film. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I preferred it over the first one, and it was one of the bigger surprises of the year. Number 5, and continuing talking about Glenn Powell, Hitman. Now, this was a movie that I didn't really really know anything about. I had heard people talk about this movie, heard this people hype it up when it like premiered at like a film festival or something when it first came out. A lot of people were talking about it, a lot of people were hyping it up, saying it was one of the better movies of the year and it was really enjoyable, one of Netflix's best movies. But it then came out, and then we learned it came out, and then we learned when it that this is not really a Netflix movie. Netflix just bought the rights to it, so I didn't really know what to expect from this movie because I had, like I said, I heard rumbles about it. I had heard people talk about it, and the main guy that kind of got me in kind of interested about checking out the movie was Sean Chandler. He had been talking about this movie a lot at the beginning of last year. I believe it was on his most anticipated of 2024. He had been really talking about this movie because I believe he said he like knew the director personally, something like that, and he was making a movie and he was really excited for it because of that. But I didn't know what to expect. But usually Netflix movies don't work out for me. They have cool concepts, but they just don't end up delivering. Excuse me. And that's what I was kind of expecting what Hitman was going to be. But wow, this ended up being one of my favorite films of the year by the time I finished it because it was an absolute hell of a ride, and this movie is just a lot of fun. And what basically this movie is just kind of a showcase of what Glenn Powell can do as an actor. And I don't think we needed more proof to see what he can do as an actor because he was freaking amazing in this movie. Because like you get this guy who I believe is like a tech whiz at the police academy, if I at the police or whatever you want to say. I don't know if academy, but he's kind of like a tech whiz. But then the one guy that kind of fakes like the hitman stuff or whatever, he doesn't show up one day or he got in trouble with something, and they have him step up, they dress him up, and then the first day when he does it, he's like really really good, and they continue having him do that until the new guy comes back. But every time he goes to meet the guy, meet the person that wants him to kill someone, he dresses up in like a cool like fake prosthetic stuff, and it's just fun. And you just see this like normal regular guy just like do this, and he's just so happens to be really good at it, and then how he learns that he's so good at it, and he just makes himself look better, so he kind of like gets all dressed up and he acts all cool and all that. Glenn Powell, and he's just a national treasure in this movie because this movie is surprisingly funny. Like there are moments where it's not great, but the humor is a lot of fun, and this ends and to where you think it's just like a cool like comedy about a guy pretending to be a hitman, and then it turns into all of a sudden a rom-com at the end of it to where I wasn't expecting that. And it becomes real, and that's when it becomes like really interesting because then we find out like Glenn Powell's character, I believe his name is Glenn if I'm not mistaken, like, and then he finds out the girl that he likes and the girl he's talking to, she originally wanted him to kill her ex-husband or whatever, and then they started dating, and then she ends up supposedly killing him, and then they have to figure their whole thing out. It's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for the movie that it for what it's trying to be, and it's a movie I keep recommending to my dad because this is a movie I really think he would enjoy. But yeah, I really enjoyed Hitman. It was one of the biggest surprises of the year, and when I do my top 10 of the year, you're going to see it again on that list because I really enjoyed Hitman. This was a huge surprise for me. I'm really glad I found out that this movie existed. And I watched this movie at like the most random point I remember. I remember I was home alone one day. I was bored. My parents were out of town, and they were out of town, and I was like bored, and I was on Netflix. I was like, you know what? People are talking about this Hitman movie. I might as well watch it, and I'm very glad I did. I'm glad that was kind of like the butterfly effect because I guarantee you, if I had left with my family, I would have never even watched this movie. So yeah, it was a cool little butterfly effect for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed the Hitman. It's a lot of fun, and it's better than the actual Hitman movies that we've been getting, which is kind of embarrassing. Number 4. Now, this is a movie I have already talked about on my top 10 horror movies of the year, so I'm not going to be talking about it a whole lot because I've already talked about it, and that is Speak No Evil. Now, this was a movie I was very negative on. I had no anticipation for this movie. I really didn't have any interest in the movie, so just something about the movie, just again, a lot of red flags because when they announced this movie, I'm like, well, what's the point of it? There's no point of the movie if there's already original because this is a remake of a foreign film, I guess if you want to call it that, because it's barely a foreign film from which I have not seen the original. I don't really care to. A lot of people that are reliable and how I have the same opinion as or share the same opinion as, they say they don't care for it. So I just never had the interest to check it out. But just a lot of red flags because what I know about the original is that it's not spoken in a different language. It's mostly spoken in English from what I hear. I just hear that the characters have an accent to where it's kind of difficult to understand them, but there are some moments where they speak in a different language. But it's just like, oh, okay. So, again, why would you want to remake a foreign film and Americanize it? And apparently they toned this movie down from the original one, and you're going to release a remake of a film that came out literally 2 years ago, which it's not even that old, and a movie that deserves a remake should be maybe older than 2 fucking years old, really. And just again, a movie that is produced by Blumhouse, who had a terrible year last year, in my opinion, who already put out two stinkers that I had watched. It's just like, well, this movie has a lot of red flags on it. Why should I care to watch it? But then it's I'm about week two. I'm about what week one or week two into school at this point. I'm like, you know what? I'm probably not gonna have a lot of opportunities to go to the movies anymore because of school. I'm a freshman. I'm gonna focus on that. We have big tests and stuff in that, so I might as well enjoy it. And so I did a double feature. I ended up going watching The Killer's Game, and then after that was over, I went and watched Speak No Evil. And surprisingly, Speak No Evil was the one I enjoyed the best out of those two movies because this was a huge surprise for me. Now, I hear the characters in the first one are kind of dumb, so it kind of makes sense. But the characters in this movie aren't very smart. But again, they kind of give us context to why they're not leaving or whatever. But James McAvoy, he is up there with Hugh Grant as best horror actor of the year if they had a horror academy, which I feel it should go to Hugh Grant, but James McAvoy is like right behind him. I really love it when James McAvoy does these crazy, creepy roles that always fits him well, and he just does brilliantly with it. And yeah, Speak No Evil, it was a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't expect to watch this movie at all, let alone enjoy it as much as I did. So yeah, Speak No Evil, if you were like me, I would definitely check this movie out, especially if you haven't seen the original. Or apparently, if you don't like the original, you're going to prefer this one from what I hear. So yeah, I really enjoyed Speak No Evil. I really enjoyed it, and it was the only good Blumhouse movie of 2024, in which there was four of them, and three of them sucked. Coming in at number three, now if I were to do a list of worst advertising of 2024, this one would be number one. Number three is Transformers 1. Now, I am not a huge fan of Transformers. I grew up with the Michael Bay movies. I don't really care for them that much. I just never really grew up a Transformers fan in general. I grew up with the toys, obviously, but I didn't grow up with the cartoons or anything like that. I guess I was just kind of introduced to the wrong Transformers because I feel if I was introduced to the animated movies and animated show, I feel I'd be a bigger fan of them. But this was a movie I saw the trailers and commercials. I was like, wow. I thought Michael Bay's Transformers movie sucked, but this one just looks like it's a boring kids movie again, which I thought that for If, and again, look what happens. So I was like, okay. A lot of and early reactions came out, and if it weren't for early reactions, I would have never even bothered to go near this movie. And early reactions came out and said this was one of the best movies of the year, and it was easily the best Transformers movie and probably the best animated movie of the entire year. I was like, really? That movie? The movie that looks stupid and hasn't sold anybody on it. Well, that's going to be movie of the year. Okay, let's see this. And so I go and check it out after a little family trip that we did. And after we got back in town, I was like, okay, that Transformers movie looks decent. Let's go. Let's see what it's like. And it tells you how well this movie did when I was the only one in the theater. So, huh. And I was watching it, and I went, my God, what is this movie? Why is this movie good? Like, why didn't you advertise this movie when you advertised something completely different? Because what you sold me on, I was not interested in. But then when I went and watched the movie, I was completely sold. I was hooked, and this is supposed to set up a trilogy that I actually want to see because this ended up becoming my favorite Transformers movie, which is again not a high bar. They're not very good. So this ended up becoming my favorite Transformers movie. It is one of the biggest surprises of the year, and one of the things I was really worried about was the voice casting. They all do a brilliant job, especially the guy, Brian Tyree Henry, who voices Megatron. He does perfect in this movie. And if there was an award for best voice actor of the year, give it to Tyree Henry. He does brilliantly as Megatron. It blew me away how well he did, and just the story that it told us with Optimus Prime and Megatron, and how it showed us how they were once brothers and really close to each other, and how everything just fell apart and how they didn't become the way they were. And yeah, that was again, that's not a movie I was really interested in, but they completely sold me into that story and completely showed me a story that I want to see them continue. But unfortunately, this movie didn't do well at the box office, and a lot of us that watched it tried to get people to go watch it, saying, "No, no, 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 trust us. It's really good. It's nothing at all what you've been advertised." But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that sequel or this trilogy will see the light of day. Maybe we'll be lucky and it will be a Paramount Plus only films, which I don't really want. But if that's the best way to get it, I'll take it. But yeah, I'm hoping Paramount sees us, that would see that we praise this movie. Maybe they'll get a better advertising team to where we'll get interested, so other people will get interested in it. But I'm really hoping that we see that trilogy come to light today, because this was one of the bigger surprises of the year, and it was by far the best Transformers movie I have ever seen. Coming in at number two is a movie which I did not see coming at all, and that is The Heretic. Heretic is probably the best made film of the entire year, if I'm being honest, because this was a movie I didn't know anything about it. I heard people talk about it after coming out of a film festival earlier this year. Cody Leach, who is a very reliable guy on YouTube that I follow, he was praising the shit out of this movie on Twitter, and when he did a review for it, he said it was one of his favorite movies of the year, which did not expect that. And he's a guy I really relied on. I kind of share the same opinions as him. So I was like, okay, if I get a chance to check this movie out, I'll check it out. And luckily, my local theater was playing, and I was like, okay, I'll go check this movie out. I'll see what this movie's about. But this ended up becoming one of my favorite films of the year, to where when I do my top 10 favorite movies of the year, this movie's going to be on there. It's going to be fucking high up there, actually, because this movie, it just blew my mind of how good it is. Because this is a religious horror film, and I'm not overly religious. I do believe in God, but I'm not an overly religious man. I did not grow up Catholic or anything like that. And that kind of had me nervous going in. I was like, oh god, another Catholic horror movie. People are gonna get offended. People are gonna be like, meh. Like, Catholic horror movies don't really work for me. The only one that I think really works for me is The Omen and The Exorcist 3. Yeah, I prefer The Exorcist 3 over the first one. Sue me. Please don't. I don't have a lot of money. But yeah, and it's a movie that I went to check out, and it's not just a religious horror movie. It really tests your faith in God and tests your faith in what you truly believe in. And the movie does a brilliant job of doing that, to where the writing, amazing. The execution on everything they're trying to sell you on, and the execution on the message that they're trying to tell the audience is perfect. And this movie always kind of leads you into something, to where like you think it's going to be going this way, but it ends up going right, because you think it's like, aha, I know what you're gonna do now, but then they pull the rug under you. You're like, no, no, you don't, and it goes in a completely different route. It is one of the best written movies of. It is the best written movie of the entire year of 2024, and it is one of the best horror movies of 2024, and it is just simply one of the best films of 2024. I loved Heretic. I am dying to watch it again. I'm hoping we get that Blu-ray release date soon, because I really want to rewatch this movie again, and I want to watch this with my mom because I really think she would like this one. So yeah, I loved Heretic. It is one of the best films of the year, and it absolutely blew my mind of how much I loved it. But coming in at my number one, the most surprising movie of 2024 for me, and this was the movie I was the biggest naysayer on, and that is The First Omen. When they announced this movie, I was the biggest hater of this movie, because I hate prequels. Prequels do not need to exist, I feel. They give me answers to questions I was never wanting answers to, and they just ruin, excuse me, and they just ruin everything. And it's just like, well, what's the point? You just ruined the mystery of something. And so when they announced this, it's like, what are you going to do? Like, There's nothing of that original movie or that original film that merits a prequel. There's nothing there you can tell me that I've already gotten kind of answers to. And so this was my birthday movie, so I was a little optimistic. And I was like, you know what? It's fine. I'll check out the movie. It's not going to be very good, but I want to at least enjoy this movie. It's my birthday movie. I want to enjoy it. But when I was done watching the movie and when I walked out of the theater, I went, son of a bitch. Was that the best Omen movie since the first one? Because this movie really blew me away of how much I generally enjoyed this film. Because what I got from this movie, and like I just said with prequels, they ruin everything. This movie doesn't ruin anything. If anything, it improves on stuff. It gives me answers to questions. It's like, okay, I enjoy that to where this movie was so enjoyable and did such a good job of being a prequel. I can see myself watching this movie and then going straight to The Omen. I can honestly see that. I can see myself watching this movie before I watch The Omen because it does such a good job at that, and it does such a brilliant, brilliant way of doing it to where it doesn't ruin anything. It more adds on to stuff, and I just loved it to where it merits its existence, and to where I think that's what every filmmaker should do. It should look at the First Omen and it should take notes of how to make a good prequel and how to merit its existence. One of the worst prequels I have ever seen, and one of the worst films I have ever seen, is Leatherface. That is the worst prequel I have ever seen in my life because it does nothing correct. This movie is the definition of how to do a correct horror prequel. It does everything right, I feel, in my mind. And to where the one thing I just don't like about this movie is its ending. It tries to set up possibly a sequel or some sort of follow up. It's like, no, you were doing just so well at setting up Damien's story and setting up everything that happens before The Omen. Why on God's earth would you want to make a sequel? And what would you even title it? The Second Omen? But yeah, the First Omen, it was the biggest surprise of the year. And not only that's not the only reason it surprised me, because you're gonna be seeing some shit in this movie. So if you're very sensitive to birthing scenes in films, you're gonna be seeing some shit in this movie because woo-wee. Seriously, it's gonna stick with you. Thank you all so much for watching my list of my top 10 most surprising films of 2024. Let me know which movie surprised you the most down in the comments below, and we shall talk about it. And look out for the rest of my end of the year rankings tomorrow. Hopefully, you'll be getting my worst movies of 2024, but we shall see. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you will get notified for all of my latest videos. And of course, until my next video, see you all next time.